Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really fascinating sources you sent over today, looking at cultural heritage, legal shifts, and diplomacy.
It's quite a story.
Yeah, and our focus for this deep dive is unpacking the journey of one specific object, the Djidji Ayôkwé. It's a sacred drum. And we want to understand why its recent return is being seen as, well, such a key moment in this whole conversation about artifacts from the colonial era.
Absolutely. It's amazing how a single object, can carry so much weight, history, identity, and these really complex changes in law.
And we'll definitely connect it to the bigger picture, right? Global cultural policy and what this might mean going forward.
Exactly.
So to really get why the return matters so much, let's start with the drum itself. What exactly is the Djidji Ayôkwé? Can you help us picture it?
Sure. Well, the Djidji Ayôkwé is it's a huge sacred talking drum belonging to the Ébrié people.
Huge, too.
We're talking massive, over 3 meters long, and it weighs something like 430 kilograms. And its function was incredible. It was literally used to send coded messages, ceremonial stuff, warnings, community calls.
Like a communication device?
Precisely. Across distances, believe it or not, up to 30 kilometers, using the tonal Ébrié language. Think of it like as their ancient internet.
That's incredible. So much more than just a drum, then.
Oh, absolutely. It's seen as this deep vessel of their identity, their heritage. Its loss wasn't just losing an object. They described it as a loss of identity and freedom.
You can feel the weight of that. So how did something so vital end up in France?
Well, it was taken, confiscated by French colonial forces back in 1916.
Right.
And its early life there wasn't great. It was actually kept outdoors for years until 1930. Then it went to the Musée du Quiberon.
Was it looked after there?
Yes, eventually. It actually had a pretty significant restoration in Paris. They dealt with insect damage, strengthened it with some kind of non-altering resin. But they were careful, to keep its acoustic properties intact.
Okay, so it was preserved. But getting it back, that sounds complicated, especially with France's laws.
Extremely complicated. This is where it gets really interesting, legally speaking.
You mentioned the inalienability doctrine. That sounds like a major roadblock. How do they even start to chip away at that?
Exactly. That doctrine basically says public collections are untouchable, permanent. So yeah, a huge hurdle. The push really started gaining momentum around 2017. President Macron made a pledge about returning African artifacts.
Ah, I remember that speech.
Right. And then Côte d'Ivoire formally requested its return in 2018. The drum was part of a list of about 148 items.
Okay, so a formal request was made.
Yes. And there was an initial step, a temporary deposit agreement signed just last November 2024, that allowed it to be displayed in Abidjan at the Museum of Civilizations.
But temporary isn't permanent ownership.
Precisely. For permanent restitution, they needed a specific law. You can't just sort of bypass that core principle of inalienability without legislation. That's the crux of it. How do you navigate such a strong legal tradition?
Which brings us to the really big news. The French Parliament actually voting to transfer full ownership. That feels different.
It absolutely is different. Game-changing, really. This vote isn't just about one drum. It's a formal legal exception to that principle of inalienability.
So it cracks open the door.
It does more than crack it open. It fundamentally signals a shift, in legal thinking. It moves things beyond these temporary loans or deposits to actual definitive restitution. That's a major breakthrough.
But is it just a one-off? Or does this set a real precedent? I mean, France returned items to Benin and Senegal before.
A good point. Those returns, like Benin's royal treasures in 2021, were significant, yes. But they often happen through different sort of administrative mechanisms or specific agreements.
Huh?
The Djidji Ayôkwé is different because it's the first major artifact returned after a specific parliamentary vote like this. That carries much more legal weight.
So it embeds the principle more deeply in French law.
Exactly. It makes it harder to dismiss future claims and could genuinely accelerate things. There's talk of a broader framework law, something that would create a system for returns, rather than needing a separate vote for every single item. This drums case could really push that forward.
And diplomatically, for France and Côte d'Ivoire.
Hugely important. It helps smooth relations, shows a kind of genuine commitment to reconciliation, and you see Côte d'Ivoire stepping up too, strengthening its museums and conservation capacity.
So it sounds like progress, but are we there yet? What are the remaining challenges?
Definitely not fully there yet. That broader framework law I mentioned, it's still being debated. It's politically tricky in France, so progress is still a bit piecemeal.
And practically, getting these objects home safely.
Right. There are always practical hurdles, safe transport for fragile, massive objects like this drum, ensuring there's ongoing conservation expertise in Abidjan, building sustainable heritage management plans. These are real, ongoing challenges. The work isn't finished just because the vote passed.
It really is a fascinating intersection of culture, law, diplomacy, this whole journey of the Djidji Ayôkwé. It does feel like a potential turning point in how we handle post-colonial cultural heritage.
I think so. It's not just about restoring one incredibly sacred symbol to its community, vital as that is. It's also about building momentum, for wider legal changes, for, a deeper rethinking of museum collections globally.
A rethinking indeed.
And maybe something for you, the listener, to think about is which other significant objects sitting in collections far from their origins might now have a clearer path home because of this precedent, and what could be the next big step in this really quite profound historical shift?